So as an entrepreneur, you've taken all the risks so far, and what we want to do is make sure that you reap the rewards for all the risks that you have taken. Who in here has an idea of how much their company is worth? Anybody? Some people? A few people? Well, we're going to go through examples of two different people that have an idea of what their company is worth because they got a valuation. The first guy, I'll call him Living Large Larry. He is on his second wife. Tiffany is about 20 years younger than he is, and he's got a second family, and he just got a company valuation back, and he found out his company's worth $5 million, and he is so ecstatic that he's going to throw a big party with his wife, and they're going to enjoy the champagne. But let's look at what that $5 million valuation really means. He has $2 million of debt, so really he's got $3 million of value there. After taxes, we'll say taxes take out a third of the value, so he's left with $2 million of value, and he's has an cash flow right now of about $400,000 a year. Earlier today, Jim said, he would call this a lifestyle business. Jim articulated this perfectly. He said that's about 5 years of value, of living. At $400,000 a year, $2 million, that's about 5 years. So that's how long how long he could retire living the lifestyle that he has. In effect, he is right now tied to the business, and anything that happens in the business or his personal life, health-wise, divorce, whatever, he is living way beyond his means. As a separate example, let's look at Steady Eddie. So Steady Eddie is still with his first wife and the love of his life, Jennifer, and he got the same $5 million business valuation back on the same day. But his first question, instead of celebrating, was asking the baseline question, how much do I need? Is $5 million enough? Is that good? And in this case, when we look at it, it is enough. So he has no debt. His home is paid off. The company has no debt. His 401k, he's been doing profit sharing in 401k, and that's over $2 million right now, so we'll just call it $2 million. He's got his estate plan done, and his family lives well within their means. They spend about $130,000 a year. So same $5 million business, but he's spending $130,000 instead of $400,000 a year. In financial planning, there's a lot of work that goes into figuring out, okay, do I have enough money to retire? And without getting into all of the details, as just a quick rule of thumb, I see a lot of people say, oh, I could retire on, 5 or 6%. Withdrawal rate for my portfolio of 5 or 6%. They say the market's up 8 a year, inflation is 3, therefore I should be able to spend 5. Maybe if I eat into a little bit of my principal, I can spend 6. That's not the way the math really works. As a general rule of thumb, you can spend about 3 to 3.5% of your portfolio per year and have it last for the rest of your life. So when we look at, in this particular case, with Steady Eddie, he wants to spend $130,000 a year. A $4 million portfolio would give him that 3 to 3.5%. He's got $2 million in his 401k. So the business really only needs to generate, when he sells it, $2 million post-tax, post-debt, post-fees to advisors, etc. So if he sold it for $4 million, that's more than enough. So the company has more value than he needs to live the rest of his life. And he is now in the advantageous position of being able to say, can I afford to retire? Yes. Do I want to retire? Do I love what I'm doing? When is the right time for me to retire? He has complete control of his circumstances and has lots of options in front of him. When we look at some of the critical elements that go in, and Jim put up the in the upper left-hand corner, you see the little marker that, we're getting into one of the three legs of that stool. But his personal expenses, when we look at Living Large Larry has got his car is run through the business, his wife's car is run through the business. They've got a boat up on the Missouri River that's also run through the business. They take vacations on the company, go to the theater, dinner, etc. He's using the company basically as his personal checking account. Whereas Steady Eddie, the one thing he's running through the business is his cell phone. So that expense, when he sells the company, he'll have to make that a personal expense. So looking at some of the critical elements about what you're running through the business, what your spending is per month, what your family circumstances are very important. And then eventually we get to the net proceeds. And again, that's after all debt and taxes have been paid, professional services have been paid, and what I like to call what you get in cold hard cash at closing. And I think it's important to look at it as the cash that you have at closing, because once you transition control, it's out of your hands at that point. So you can sell maybe parts of equity of your company multiple times, but at the point you transition control, that's a major step. And if you're selling it lock, stock, and barrel in one step, and expecting an earn out, or you're getting stock swap in as part of the deal, when looking at the math, I would simply look at the cash component of it. So these are critical elements. Next, we'll look at a couple of the key elements. And the big one there is family life expectancy. Who knows how long they're going to live? Raise your hand. Who does not know how long they're going to live? Raise your hand. All right, at least people are still awake. That's a positive sign. In my experience working with clients, the vast majority of them live longer than they expect. And they all, not all, that's a poor choice of words, the majority of them exceed their life expectancy. Business owners fall into that same category. Most owners live beyond their actuarial life expectancy. And the reason, there's a number of reasons for that, but the basic reason is you get better health care. You actually go see the doctor. You select good doctors. When there's a problem, you prioritize it and actually go and address it. And you have access to good health care. So the life expectancy numbers are dealing with the entire population, not your peer group. So you should expect that, you will outlive as a group, not any one individually, but as a group, this group is going to outlive the average life expectancy of our entire population. So that's the first thing, is the money needs to last longer than most people expect. Health insurance, we have the ACA, I'll leave it at that. And then the big question, really, that people, I think, underestimate is what are they going to do with all of their time? So a lot of owners have their whole life invested in their business. They've been working there 30, 40 years, 40, 50, 60, maybe more hours a week. Their identity is wrapped up in that business. And to transition out of that overnight is a huge undertaking. It's not hard to leave from a physical perspective, from an emotional perspective. That is very challenging. And we've had a number of owners that have sold their business, and then we've, as they're getting ready to sell, we're working with them to try to help them understand just how big this transition is. You're used to working, and when you walk into the office, everybody jumps when you walk in. Anything you ask for gets taken care of. Your calendar? Who here has free time on their calendar? Nobody. Because everybody wants a piece of your time. Once you retire, you've got lots of free time. What are you going to do with it all? Unless you have outside interests and activities, it can be a challenge. It is not uncommon for people that have never had any issues with depression, owners, for the first year after they sell their business to struggle with depression. And it's really because they've not prepared for that next stage or that of their life, which is, what are you going to do with all your time? It's an easy problem to solve if you're putting the building blocks in place up front. So that's a key element that when you get within a couple of minutes of retiring, you want to be aware of that. And then the last thing I'll touch on, financial planning. We've talked about your situation. The funnel is, putting it all together, and what comes out at the end? Well, Uncle Sam's going to get his piece. That much I can assure you. From a retirement perspective, we like to put the money into a couple buckets. One bucket we call your living funds. That's to maintain your lifestyle for the rest of your life. In this case, $4 million would have gone in to Steady Eddie's living funds. All the extra money that he gets for selling his business, that'll go into something else, perhaps a charity bucket, something for the kids, something for a legacy. But by articulating it that way and having this one bucket that's just the living funds, they're protected for the rest of their life. So ultimately, the financial planning is trying to address the question of, when can I afford to retire? How much do I need to sell my business for? When can I sell my business? And how much am I going to spend in retirement?